Yes, so what's up, wonderful people? Welcome to another wonderful episode of the HBS podcast. I do hope that you are well and you are actually doing wonderful. This particular day being on the 17th day of the month of June, the year 2024. Actually, it's expected, it is normally expected around this particular time of the year that the weather actually just gets cold. But during this particular time of the year, things have been changing, and I have realized that June is not as cold as it used to be, or maybe I used to have it cold since in those particular years it was a norm. Really, it was just a norm that the weather just gets extremely cold. But right now things have changed, and it's not as cold as it used to be those particular years. We are actually coming to you live from Nairobi, and I do hope that you are actually doing well, and you are also having an enjoyable day. Today has been a public holiday right here in Kenya. So I always do say, well, it is actually my opinion that if you want to see Nairobi in its entirety, make sure that you actually visit on a public holiday. That is when you would see the beautiful part of Nairobi. But if you're actually just trying to see Nairobi on these normal or these other days, Nairobi is actually quite hectic, especially on the roads. But if you do want to see a bit of the quieter, the more the quieter part of Nairobi, I would actually just suggest that you do it maybe perhaps on a public holiday such as this. And when a public holiday actually falls on a Monday, things are even much better because people are actually extending their weekends, and during this particular time, you are able to see a different side, maybe perhaps of Nairobi, and witness the quieter side of this particular side of the city. People do say that Nairobi is overpopulated. I'm not of the same opinion. For me, I think that Nairobi, it has to do with the planning. It has to do with the planning of our city. That is why sometimes you find that roads are extremely hectic. There's a whole lot of traffic jam on these particular roads, especially in the rush hour, in the evening, in the morning hours. But I think if we did have better planning, maybe perhaps it would be at a better place of just being more organized, and people being able to get to work or live in work at a better pace than it is right now. So let me know how you are doing. Let me know how you are doing. Let me know also where you might be actually taking us out from. If you haven't subscribed to this particular channel, I would actually just urge you to subscribe to the channel. Please make sure that you subscribe to the channel. And this is a HBS podcast. HBS is simply hosted by Spikes. And this is not about anything in particular. It has to do with us just getting to look up and discuss the things that are happening around the world. These might be of political aspects. They might be of social topics. But we do purpose to just connect on this particular platform. It has been a minute since I did a live show, but every now and then I do have an interest in just getting to connect and just getting to vibe regarding different issues, just making a social commentary on what's going on around the world. This might be to do with cultural issues. It might have to do with historical issues. It might have to do with even future matters. All those things put together. We do endeavor to just come and just connect right here on the HBS podcast, which I do purpose to be bringing maybe perhaps every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, or maybe it might even be at a more frequent schedule than Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. So if you are joining us for the very first time right here on this particular channel, please make sure you subscribe. Please make sure you subscribe, and also make sure that you are sharing it with your friends. We want to talk matters Africa, and we want to talk matters what is owed to Africa, because a whole lot of African items or African artifacts were looted from the continent, and that is what I want to bring our attention to. I want to talk about this whole matter of African artifacts that were stolen from the African continent, and some of them have been returned, but nonetheless, the pace at which these particular artifacts are actually being returned is too slow. And also, to some extent, I would say that we as an African people have not been keen on claiming back our African artifacts that were stolen from our our different African kingdoms. Back then, we did not have countries. We did not have Uganda. We did not have Ghana. We did have different kingdoms. For example, we did have the Congo Kingdom. We did have other different kingdoms around the continent of Africa, the Mali Kingdom as well. And so much of our African artifacts were stolen, were looted from the continent. And they were taken to different places. For example, the British do have a lot of those African artifacts. The Germans do also do have a whole lot of those African artifacts. The Belgians, in Europe, if you go around these different museums in Europe, you will find a whole lot of African artifacts stolen and looted from the continent and taken and put, preserved in different places for the sake of a showcase and exhibition and for other different purposes. But right now, what is happening is that the University of Cambridge has returned 39 traditional artifacts to Uganda. And actually, I would say this is actually something positive, only that we as an African people have not had a keen interest, in these particular artifacts that were stolen. On the continent of Africa, people are much more concerned about other things. For example, survival, rather than, looking into things that have been taken from us. The University of Cambridge has repatriated more than three dozen traditional artifacts to Uganda in a major act of restitution, welcomed by the local officials who sought them. And these do include different artifacts. And these are not just artifacts. I'm talking about the whole of the continent of Africa. I'm talking about even places such as Egypt. A whole lot of artifacts were stolen and taken from Egypt. And supposedly, I would see that there have not been enough interest in reclaiming back our artifacts back to the continent. And you look at the bronze from Benin, for example, the bronze from Benin, and realize that these were actually taken from this Benin kingdom. This is the current day Benin and around the area of Benin and Nigeria. And I was just saying that we as an African people have not had much interest. We have not been much keen on claiming back these particular items. And also, when these items are here, they are not put to good use. For example, with the management of our museums right here on the continent, I think that is also lacking, so that maybe perhaps we might talk about what happens now that these particular items are brought back to the continent. What shall we do with these particular items? Are we putting these particular artifacts to good use? And are they actually helping, maybe perhaps monetarily, financially, economically? Are they helping in these different regards when they are brought back to the African continent? That is my question. Because, for example, if you're talking about not just Uganda, let's go to Egypt. In Egypt, we have different, for example, the heads of some of the sphinx. They were taken. Also, we do have artifacts, golden artifacts, golden artifacts, and not just golden artifacts, but even others that have been carved out of wood. Some of them being taken so many years back. But when it comes to now, the Egyptian government claiming back these particular artifacts, you will find that the whole process becomes tedious. It's a whole lot of back and forth. But my only question is, how is it that in history, we are told that the Africans or the Europeans, what they met were savages on the continent? And how then will you steal from the artifacts that you claim were made by the savages? They will say all people were so backward. They will say that people on the continent did not have any kind of a sophistication. People on the continent were rather quite backward. But then again, if these people the Europeans talk about the people that they met on the African continent, if these people are as backward, and if these people are as unsophisticated as you would claim in some of the records kept by the Europeans, why then would the Europeans actually come up and steal your artifacts if they think that you are archaic, if they think that you're backward, if they think that you're unsophisticated? How then will it be that you will steal these artifacts? One of the things that I'll actually tell you is that for the artifacts that have been stolen from from Egypt and other parts of Northern Africa, these have actually been stolen for the purposes of um, um, uh, corrupting history. They will actually come up and say, oh, these are the people that were actually kings and queens in Egypt or pharaohs in Egypt. And that is after they have actually destroyed some of these artifacts for the sake of just actually putting a taint or spoiling or actually interfering with history as we get to know it on the African continent. So that is what has been happening. This is actually a good move that we do have these artifacts being returned to the African continent. And the University of Cambridge has returned 39 traditional artifacts to Uganda. As always, I always keep on telling us that if all the artifacts are returned from these museums in Europe, if all the artifacts are returned, then we might have a situation where we do have empty museums in Europe, because most of these particular artifacts that are in exhibition that are actually being showcased, these are actually African artifacts, taken from Northern Africa, taken from Western Africa, taken from Southern Africa, and even in Uganda. This is in Eastern Africa. This is where we do have some of these artifacts just being taken from. This is a HBS podcast. Thank you for kicking it with us. For those that might watch also this particular show later, make sure you hit the thumbs up. Make sure you also watch and share with a friend or a colleague or a family, and that would actually be a positive thing. We move a little bit further from that particular matter of a stolen artifact and how we should be claiming back this particular artifact, and go into another whole different story. And this has to do with a situation of a magistrate being attacked. This is a situation of a magistrate being attacked. And this is Monica Kivuti. Her name was Monica Kivuti, who was actually shot in the premises of a court in Kenya. And she has actually succumbed after shooting by police. And this is a case where a Kenyan magistrate was shot by a senior police officer earlier this week. She has died. And Justice Mother Koome wrote on Twitter or X that the Makadara principal magistrate Monica Kivuti has lost a fight against her extensive injuries. And Ms. Kivuti was shot by a policeman at a court at the capital city in Nairobi on Thursday after she cancelled his wife's bail due to the woman's absconding. And the policeman, identified as Samson Kiptiltil Kipruto, was himself shot dead by other officers following the attack. And there has now been an order. There is now an order that the flag actually at all judiciaries be raised at half-mast to sort of just show respect and mourning with the family of these slain Kenyan magistrate. Sometimes I do think that every other job, sometimes you do think that police officers are the ones that are actually prone to succumbing to injuries from their occupation. But even magistrates right now, you realize that the magistrates and any occupation, no occupation really is 100% proof. You would also have occupational dangers, occupational dangers, you might call them so, in different careers or in different places where you might be working. You might be working as a police officer, you might be working as a cook, you might be working as whatever your place of work, you might be working, and actually you are actually prone to injuries and accidents, and even things like this that are not just accidents. This is someone just coming and shooting you at your place of work simply because you made a ruling against their wife or their spouse. And that is actually very, very much unfortunate. This is the HBS podcast. Thank you for actually just flipping in. And we shall be taking you right now to South Africa. And these are just commentaries on some of the things that are actually making headlines. And in South Africa, Jacob Zuma right now has joined. Has joined the opposition. MK's party. Zuma's MK party is set to join South Africa's opposition alliance. And I remember that South Africa just recently concluded their elections. So South African former President Jacob Zuma has said that his political party, Umkhonto weSizwe, in short it's MK, will join the opposition alliance in parliament. He said it would coordinate a resistance to the governing coalition led by the African National Congress. And despite this, MK said it has maintained that last month's election were rigged and wanted the results to be annulled. Mr. Zuma's speech on Sunday was read by MK spokesperson Lamulo Ndela, who said that the ANC was no longer part of the solution in this particular country. If you do ask me, when it comes to matters South African politics, I'll tell you for a fact that these elections were not free and fair. And another opposition figure, Julius Malema, will also tell you the same. But it seems like Julius Malema is now throwing in the towel. Malema might actually just say, because you did not vote for me, then you should have actually now have to carry your own burden over the economic crisis in South Africa and also other different challenges facing the country simply because you did not vote for me. And Malema came in number 4. Malema actually came in number 4. And we did have ANC coming in number 1. ANC did not actually surpass the 50% mark that is supposed to be reached for any party to become legitimately have a legitimate claim to power. And we also did have the Democratic Alliance in this particular country. And then we did have MK. And then after MK, we did have the Economic Freedom Fighters, the EFF, the Economic Freedom Fighters in this particular country. So this is another different move where we're seeing Malema. Sorry, not Malema, but MK. And the MK party, which is Zuma's party, saying that they will be joining the opposition. They will actually be joining the opposition, and we shall be keeping just the tabs. For me, I'll just be keeping an eye, just to see how this particular one pans out. When we have the ANC, the Democratic Alliance, sort of now making making a coalition, and now having a distribution of different positions going to these particular parties, I would say that South Africa is still far from genuine representation because of our different challenges with the electoral process. But nonetheless, that has not stopped Jacob Zuma standing up and saying that he will be part of the opposition and that they will be keeping Ramaphosa in check. And we are supposed to be seeing how that particular one will play out because South Africa is a nation which is a whole lot of divide. We do have a country which is of a black majority, but the power or the resources seem to be in the hands of of the white minority. And these actually, there is a problem. There's a problem somewhere with that, as you may see when it comes to the economic representation in this particular country. Nonetheless, this has been the HBS podcast, just checking in and just touching base on what is going on with a whole lot of, with a few of these news are making headlines right here on the African continent and also around the world. Much peace and love to you. Next time, I would want to say kwaheri. Make sure you're staying safe and enjoy the rest of your week. We shall hope to catch up next time. And if you watch this particular show on the replay, please subscribe. Please hit the like button and also share with your friends. Till next time, peace and love. Peace out from your homeboy Spikes. Till next time, it's the HBS podcast.